She was fired on Christmas Eve until a little boy found her crying and said, "My daddy can fix this." Clara Bennett didn't know that losing everything would lead her to the one man who'd been searching for someone exactly like her, or that his son had been praying for someone to make his daddy smile again. 2 hours earlier, Clara had stood in her manager's office at Harrington's department store, watching her entire world collapse in the span of 90 seconds. "The security footage is conclusive," Mrs. Marlowe had said, her voice cold and clipped as she slid a grainy printout across the mahogany desk. The image showed Clara standing near the jewelry counter, her hand extended toward the display case. The Mikimoto pearl necklace, $800, missing from inventory. "You were the last one at that station." Clara's hands had trembled as she gripped the edge of the desk. "I didn't take anything. I would never. Security will escort you out, immediately. We could press charges, Miss Bennett, but given the season, we'll simply terminate your employment. Effective now." Mrs. Marlowe hadn't even looked at her as she said it, just kept writing something in her ledger, pen scratching against paper like nails on a chalkboard. Clara had wanted to scream, to fight, to demand they check the footage again, to see Vanessa, bitter, jealous Vanessa who'd been passed over for Employee of the Month 3 times while Clara won it, lingering near that same counter during her break. But security was already at the door. 2 men in ill-fitting uniforms, looking uncomfortable but determined. The walk through the store had been the longest of her life, past the perfume counters she'd worked for 2 years, past the holiday shoppers who stopped and stared, past her co-workers who averted their eyes, afraid that her bad luck might be contagious. They'd handed her a small cardboard box at the employee entrance, her nameplate, a coffee mug that said, "World's Best Sales Associate," a framed photo of her parents, dead now for 13 years. And then she was outside, in the cold, in the snow that had just begun to fall. On Christmas Eve, Clara had walked without direction, the box clutched against her chest like it might shield her from the wind. The streets of Boston glittered with fairy lights and garland, storefront windows showcasing perfect family scenes that felt like mockery. Carols drifted from open doorways, all joy and peace and goodwill toward men. She'd found herself in an alley beside a closed cafe, the kind of narrow space between buildings where delivery trucks usually parked. A broken street lamp flickered overhead, casting everything in sickly yellow pulses. Her coat, thin, bought second-hand 3 winters ago, was already soaked through. Her blonde hair hung in wet ropes against her cheeks. Mascara she'd applied so carefully that morning, hoping it might be a good day, ran in dark rivulets down her face. The box slipped from her numb fingers. Its contents spilled across the snowy pavement. The frame cracked, glass scattered like stars, and something inside Clara broke with it. She sank against the brick wall, knees pulled to her chest, and sobbed. Not quiet, dignified tears. The kind of crying that came from somewhere deep and primal, the kind that shook her entire body. She'd held it together for so long, through her parents' funeral when she was 16, through aging out of foster care at 18 with nothing but a garbage bag of clothes, through every lonely Christmas in her tiny apartment, pretending it was fine to eat ramen noodles alone while watching other people's families on television. But this was too much. She had $43 in her checking account. Her rent was 3 months overdue. Her landlord had taped an eviction notice to her door yesterday, and now she didn't even have a job. She was completely, utterly alone. That's when she heard the footsteps, small ones, crunching through the snow with the determined rhythm of a child on a mission. "Why are you crying?" Clara's head snapped up. Through the blur of tears, she saw him. A little boy, no older than 5, with tousled brown hair peeking out from under a red knit cap. He wore a puffy winter coat that made him look like a small, concerned marshmallow. His hazel eyes, enormous and impossibly earnest, blinked at her with the kind of pure curiosity that only children possess. She tried to turn away to hide her face. "I'm fine, sweetheart. You should go back to your parents." But the boy didn't leave. Instead, he sat down beside her in the snow, just plopped right down, heedless of the cold or the wet or the fact that he was sitting next to a complete stranger having a breakdown in an alley. "My mommy cried sometimes too," he said softly, "before she went to heaven." Clara's breath caught. She looked at him fully now, this small boy with snowflakes caught in his eyelashes. "I'm so sorry." He shrugged with the matter-of-fact acceptance children sometimes have about impossible things. "It's okay. It makes Daddy sad, but he says Mommy's watching us, and she'd want us to help people who are sad." He tilted his head, studying her with unsettling intensity. "You look really, really sad." A laugh bubbled up through Clara's tears, half hysterical. "I am really, really sad." "I'm Oliver," he announced, extending a mittened hand formally. "I'm 5. What's your name?" "Clara." She shook his tiny hand, feeling surreal. "Hi, Clara." Oliver smiled, gap-toothed and genuine. Then his expression turned serious again, the gravity of a child who has made an important decision. He leaned closer, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "My daddy can fix this." "What?" "My daddy can fix this," Oliver repeated, more confidently now. "He fixes everything, even really big stuff. He fixed our house when the pipes broke. He fixed my bike when the chain came off. He even fixed Mr. Whiskers when his ear got torn." He paused. "Mr. Whiskers is my stuffed cat." Despite everything, Clara felt her lips twitch. "That's very kind, but—" "Oliver!" The voice cut through the snow-muffled quiet like a whip, deep, urgent, edged with panic. Clara looked up to see a man striding toward them, tall and broad-shouldered, his long wool coat billowing behind him. Even in her devastated state, she registered the details. Dark hair, slightly disheveled, strong jaw clenched with worry, eyes the color of storm clouds, currently wide with fear. He reached them in seconds, dropping to one knee in the snow. His hands went immediately to Oliver's shoulders, checking him over with the practiced efficiency of a worried parent. "What have I told you about running off? You can't just—" His gaze flicked to Clara, and his words died. She knew what he saw. A woman in a soaked coat, makeup destroyed, surrounded by the scattered wreckage of her former life. A stranger sitting entirely too close to his son in a dark alley. She waited for the accusation, the suspicion, the protective fury. But what came was different. "Are you hurt?" The question was gentle, directed at her. His storm-gray eyes swept over her, not with judgment, but with concern. "Do you need help?" Clara tried to speak, but her throat closed. She shook her head mutely, mortified. "She doesn't have anywhere to go," Oliver piped up, his small voice matter-of-fact. "It's Christmas Eve, Daddy. We can't leave her here." The man, Oliver's father, held Clara's gaze for a long moment. She saw him processing, making calculations, saw the war between caution and compassion play out across his features. His eyes dropped to the broken frame at her feet, to the faces in the photograph visible through cracked glass. A young couple, smiling, her parents. Something in his expression softened completely. He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, crisp and monogrammed, and offered it to her. "I'm Ethan Sawyer," he said quietly, "and I think my son is right." Clara took the handkerchief with shaking fingers, pressed it against her frozen cheeks. "I'm fine. Really, I just need—" Her voice broke. She didn't even know what she needed anymore. "There's a diner 2 blocks from here," Ethan said, still crouched in the snow, maintaining eye level with her, making himself smaller, less threatening. "Morrison's. They make good coffee, hot soup. It's warm." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "No one should be alone on Christmas Eve. Let me buy you something warm, that's all. No strings attached." "Please?" Oliver added, his small hand reaching out to touch her arm. "Please come." Clara looked between them. The man with kind eyes who should have been suspicious but wasn't. The boy who had sat beside her in the snow without fear. Something in her chest, something that had been frozen solid for years, began to crack. She was so tired, so cold, so unbearably alone. Just for a little while," she whispered. Ethan's shoulders relaxed, and he stood, extending his hand to her. "Just for a little while," he agreed. His hand was warm when she took it. Strong, steady. He pulled her gently to her feet, then bent to gather the scattered contents of her box. Oliver helped, his small hands carefully picking up pieces of broken glass. "I've got it," Clara protested weakly. "We've got it," Ethan corrected. He held the box in one arm, then offered his other arm to her. "Can you walk? You're shaking." "I'm fine." But she wasn't. Her legs trembled as she took a step, and she stumbled. Ethan's arm was immediately around her waist, supporting her weight like it was nothing. "Oliver, stay close," he instructed. The boy moved to Clara's other side, his small hand slipping into hers. And that's how they walked out of the alley. A broken woman held up by a stranger who should have walked away, guided by a 5-year-old boy who somehow knew, with the certainty that only children possess, exactly what his father needed to do. The snow continued to fall, soft and silent, covering their footprints as they went. Behind them, the broken frame lay in the alley, forgotten. Ahead, warm light from Morrison's diner glowed like a beacon. Clara didn't know it yet, but she was walking toward the only real home she'd ever have. And the 2 people beside her, the man who'd stopped to help when anyone else would have passed by, and the boy who believed his daddy could fix anything, were walking toward the missing pieces they hadn't known they needed. Sometimes salvation comes not with trumpets and angels, but with a small voice in the snow saying 4 simple words. "My daddy can fix this." Morrison's diner sat on the corner of Beacon and Charles, a relic from the 1950s that had somehow survived gentrification. Red vinyl booths, black and white checkered floors, a jukebox in the corner that still played actual records. The windows were fogged with condensation, and the scent of coffee and frying bacon wrapped around Clara like a blanket the moment they stepped inside. A bell chimed above the door. Several heads turned, then quickly looked away, drawn back to their own Christmas Eve meals. Ethan guided Clara to a corner booth, the kind tucked away from the main flow of traffic. Oliver scrambled in first, then patted the seat beside him expectantly. "Sit here," he instructed Clara. "This side is warmer." Clara slid in, hyper-aware of how she must look, bedraggled, broken, completely out of place. But Oliver simply scooted closer, his small shoulder pressing against her arm, radiating warmth and uncomplicated acceptance. Ethan took the seat across from them, already pulling off his coat. Beneath it, he wore a charcoal sweater that probably cost more than Clara's monthly rent. His watch was simple but elegant, the kind of timepiece that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. Everything about him spoke of money, of status, of a world Clara had only ever observed from the outside. A waitress appeared, older woman with kind eyes and a name tag that read Dorothy. She took one look at Clara's tear-stained face and immediately softened. "What can I get you folks?" "Hot chocolate," Oliver announced, "with extra marshmallows. For all of us." Ethan smiled, and Clara noticed how it transformed his face, how the worry lines around his eyes smoothed. "That sounds perfect, buddy. And we'll need 3 bowls of your chicken soup. The bread that comes with it, too." "Coming right up, hon." Dorothy squeezed Clara's shoulder gently as she passed, a small gesture of solidarity that made Clara's eyes burn again. The silence that followed should have been awkward, but Oliver filled it with the natural ease of a child. "Do you like Christmas, Clara?" Clara swallowed hard. Yes, I do. What's your favorite part? Mine is the cookies. Mrs. Chen makes these things called snickerdoodles, and they're the best thing in the whole entire world." Oliver's eyes went wide with emphasis. "She says the secret is cream of tartar, but I don't know what that is." "Mrs. Chen is our housekeeper," Ethan explained quietly. "She's been with our family for almost 20 years. Since before I was born, actually. She practically raised me." Clara nodded, not trusting her voice. "What about you?" Oliver persisted. "What cookies do you like?" "I've never really made Christmas cookies," Clara admitted. The words felt like a confession. Oliver's face registered pure shock. "Never? Not even once?" "Never." He turned to his father, urgent. "Daddy, we have to fix that." That's like never having a birthday. That's not okay." Ethan's gaze met Clara's across the table, and she saw understanding there, recognition. He knew there was a story behind that admission, and he wasn't going to push. "We can definitely fix that, Ollie." Dorothy returned with 3 oversized mugs of hot chocolate, each topped with a mountain of marshmallows. Steam curled upward, carrying the scent of cocoa and vanilla. Clara wrapped both hands around her mug, letting the warmth seep into her frozen fingers. "Careful," Oliver warned. "It's really hot. You have to blow on it first." He demonstrated, his small mouth forming a perfect O as he blew across the surface of his drink. Clara mimicked him and earned an approving nod. They sipped in companionable silence, and Clara felt something inside her begin to thaw. Not just her body, but something deeper, something that had been frozen since she was 16 years old and realized she was completely alone in the world. The soup arrived moments later, thick and rich, with chunks of chicken and vegetables, fresh bread, still warm, butter melting into golden pools. Clara's stomach growled audibly, and she flushed with embarrassment. "When did you eat last?" Ethan asked, his tone carefully neutral. "I had. There was coffee this morning." "Just coffee?" Clara stirred her soup, watching the steam rise. "I've been trying to save money." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't comment. He simply pushed the entire basket of bread closer to her side of the table. "Eat, please." She did. The first spoonful of soup was like heaven, warmth spreading through her chest and settling in her stomach. She hadn't realized how hungry she was, how empty. She ate slowly at first, trying to maintain some dignity, but Oliver's enthusiastic consumption gave her permission to stop pretending. "This is really good," she murmured. "Morrison's has been here forever," Ethan said. "My father used to bring me here when I was Oliver's age. After difficult days, it became a tradition." Something in his voice caught her attention. A weight, a history. Clara looked up and found him studying his son with an expression that mixed love and sorrow in equal measure. "Your wife," Clara said softly. Oliver mentioned. "Sarah." Ethan's fingers tightened around his mug. "She died 2 years ago. Complications during childbirth. We lost." His voice cracked almost imperceptibly. We lost them both, her and the baby. Clara's breath caught. I'm so sorry. Oliver had gone quiet, his spoon pausing halfway to his mouth. Ethan reached across the table and ruffled his son's hair gently. We're okay, aren't we, buddy? Yeah. But Oliver's voice was small. I miss Mommy, though. I know. Me too. Clara's heart fractured. Here she'd been drowning in her own misery, and these two were carrying a grief she couldn't even imagine. How old was Oliver when? 3. He doesn't remember much. Sometimes I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse. Ethan took a long drink of his chocolate, composing himself. What about you? The couple in the photograph. My parents. Car accident when I was 16. I went into foster care after that. Aged out at 18. Clara's voice was flat, reciting facts that no longer had the power to break her because she'd been broken by them so long ago. No other family. I've been on my own since then. Oliver's hand found hers under the table, his small fingers squeezing tight. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The gesture said everything. They finished their meal in a silence that was no longer uncomfortable, but companionable. Shared grief had a way of building bridges faster than words ever could. Dorothy brought more hot chocolate without being asked, and refused payment for it with a wink at Ethan. Outside, the snow had intensified, swirling in thick curtains past the windows. The streets were emptying as people hurried home to their families, to their Christmas Eves. Clara felt the familiar panic beginning to rise. Where would she go when this meal ended? Back to the alley? To the bus station to wait until morning? She had nowhere, nothing, no one. As if sensing her thoughts, Ethan cleared his throat. Clara, I want to make you an offer, and I need you to hear me out before you say no. She looked up, wary. I have a guest house. It's on my property, separate from the main house. It's been empty since. He paused. For a while now. You can stay there tonight. Just tonight. Until you figure things out. I can't. It's not charity, he interrupted gently. It's human decency. And honestly, he glanced at Oliver, who was watching the exchange with barely contained hope. I don't think my son will let me sleep tonight if we leave you without a place to stay. Please? Oliver's eyes were enormous. Please, Clara. It's really warm, and we have extra blankets, lots of them. And tomorrow is Christmas, and nobody should be alone on Christmas. Clara felt tears threatening again. I can't accept that. You don't even know me. I could be anyone. My son is an excellent judge of character, Ethan said simply, and he chose to sit beside you in the snow. That's enough for me. Just tonight, Clara whispered, her resistance crumbling. I'll leave first thing in the morning. We'll figure out morning when morning comes. Ethan signaled Dorothy for the check. Right now, let's just get you somewhere warm and dry. The drive to Ethan's home took 20 minutes through snow-covered streets. Clara sat in the back of his sleek black SUV with Oliver, who chattered about school and his teacher, Miss Amanda, and his best friend Tyler, who could burp the alphabet. Normal, everyday things that felt surreal given the circumstances. When they turned through a set of iron gates and up a long driveway, Clara's breath caught. The house that emerged from the swirling snow was massive. 3 stories of red brick and white columns, every window glowing golden. Christmas lights lined the roofline and wrapped around the columns, elegant and understated. A wreath hung on the double front doors adorned with pine cones and red berries. You live here? The question escaped before she could stop it. It's too big, Ethan said quietly, pulling into a garage that could have fit 6 cars. It was Sarah's dream house. Now it just feels empty. Clara understood. A beautiful cage was still a cage. They entered through a side door that led into a mudroom larger than Clara's entire apartment. Marble floors, built-in benches, hooks lined with coats that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe combined. The warmth hit her immediately, and she swayed slightly. Ethan's hand was at her elbow, steadying. Easy. The temperature change can be a shock. I'm fine. You keep saying that. His gray eyes searched hers. But you don't have to be. Not tonight. A voice called from deeper in the house, accented and warm. Mr. Ethan, you are late. Dinner is getting cold and I was about to send search party. An elderly woman appeared in the doorway, small and bird-like, with silver hair pulled into a neat bun. She wore a simple dress and an apron dusted with flour. Her eyes, dark and sharp, immediately found Clara, and her expression shifted from mild annoyance to fierce protectiveness in an instant. Who is this? Not accusatory, concerned. Mrs. Chen, this is Clara Bennett. She's going to be staying in the guest house tonight. Ethan's voice was firm, brooking no argument. Clara, this is Mrs. Chen. She's the real head of this household. Mrs. Chen bustled forward, taking Clara's cold hands in her warm ones. You are freezing, and wet, and too skinny. When did you eat last? We just had soup at Morrison's, Oliver offered helpfully. Soup. Mrs. Chen made a disapproving sound. Soup is not dinner on Christmas Eve. Come, come. I have turkey, and potatoes, and pie. You will eat properly. Mrs. Chen, I don't want to impose. You are not imposing. Mr. Ethan brings you home. You are guest. Guests eat. This is the rule. She was already pulling Clara toward what appeared to be a kitchen, still holding her hand. Mr. Ethan, you get her dry clothes. She cannot sit in wet things. She will catch death. Ethan met Clara's panicked gaze and smiled, a real smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. There's no arguing with Mrs. Chen. Trust me. I've tried for 37 years. 37 years, and you still do not listen, Mrs. Chen called over her shoulder. Clothes, now. Clara found herself swept into a kitchen that belonged in a magazine. Granite counters, professional-grade appliances, a center island that could have seated 10. But what struck her most was the warmth, not just the temperature, but the lived-in quality. Mixing bowls in the sink, a cookbook splattered with batter marks lying open on the counter, Christmas cookies cooling on racks, filling the air with cinnamon and vanilla. This room, at least, was a home. Mrs. Chen pushed her gently onto a stool at the island and immediately began pulling food from the oven. A golden brown turkey, still steaming. Mashed potatoes whipped to creamy perfection, green beans glistening with butter, cranberry sauce that wobbled invitingly in its dish. This is too much, Clara protested weakly. It's Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve is for feasting, for family. Mrs. Chen fixed her with a look that was both stern and infinitely kind. You are here, so you are family tonight, yes? Clara's throat tightened. She could only nod. Oliver climbed onto the stool beside her, watching Mrs. Chen with the comfortable familiarity of a child who'd spent countless hours in this kitchen. Mrs. Chen makes the best snickerdoodles in the whole world. You already told her about the snickerdoodles, Ethan said, returning with an armful of clothes. He set them on the counter beside Clara. Sweatpants, sweatshirt, thick socks. They'll be too big, but they're warm and dry. Thank you, Clara whispered. Bathroom is through there. He gestured to a door off the kitchen. Take your time. The bathroom was spotless, all white tile and chrome fixtures. Clara caught sight of herself in the mirror and almost didn't recognize the woman staring back. Hollow-eyed, pale, hair a tangled mess. She looked like a ghost. She changed quickly, peeling off her wet clothes and pulling on the borrowed ones. The sweatshirt smelled like expensive detergent and something else. Cedar, maybe. masculine and clean. The sweatpants required rolling several times at the waist and ankles, but they were blissfully soft and warm. When she emerged, Mrs. Chen had set the island with plates and silverware. Oliver was already in his seat, swinging his legs with anticipation. Ethan had removed his sweater, revealing a simple white t-shirt beneath that somehow made him look more approachable, more human. "Sit, sit, Mrs. Chen commanded, and Clara obeyed. The meal was extraordinary, not just the food, though that was incredible, but the atmosphere. Oliver kept up a steady stream of chatter, telling stories about school and asking Clara questions with the uninhibited curiosity of a 5-year-old. Mrs. Chen fussed, making sure Clara's plate stayed full. Ethan was quieter, but Clara felt his gaze on her throughout the meal. Not uncomfortable or intrusive, just present, aware. After dinner, Mrs. Chen shooed them into what she called the sitting room while she cleaned up. No arguments. "You go, sit by fire, be warm. I handle this." The sitting room was enormous, 2 stories high with a wall of windows overlooking snow-covered garden. But the focal point was the Christmas tree, at least 12 feet tall, decorated with what must have been thousands of lights and ornaments. Beneath it, wrapped presents spilled across a large red tree skirt. A fire crackled in a stone fireplace large enough to stand in. The furniture was leather and wood, masculine but comfortable. Family photos lined the mantel and the built-in shelves. Clara's eyes were drawn to one in particular, a woman with long, dark hair and a radiant smile, very pregnant, with Ethan's arms wrapped around her from behind, both of them glowing with happiness. Sarah. "She was beautiful," Clara said softly. Ethan stood beside her, looking at the photo with an expression that held both love and pain. "She was, inside and out." He paused. "She would have liked you. You don't know that. I do. Sarah had a gift for seeing people, really seeing them. She would have looked at you and seen what I see." Clara's heart stuttered. "What do you see?" Ethan turned to face her fully. Strength, resilience, someone who's been knocked down repeatedly and keeps getting back up, someone who's survived things that would have broken most people. His voice dropped lower. Someone who deserves better than what life has given her. Clara couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. No one had ever looked at her the way Ethan was looking at her now, like she mattered, like she was worth seeing. "Daddy! Clara! Come look!" Oliver's voice broke the moment. He was kneeling by the presents, holding up a box wrapped in silver paper. "This one sounds like it has a puzzle in it. Can we do puzzles tomorrow?" Ethan smiled, the intensity fading from his expression. "We can do whatever you want tomorrow, buddy." They settled on the couch, Oliver between them, and he proceeded to shake every present, providing running commentary on what he thought each one contained. Clara found herself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months, maybe years. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Kitchen is clean. I go home now to my daughter's house, but I leave breakfast things in refrigerator. You just warm up." She approached Clara, cupping her face with both hands. "You stay, yes? Through Christmas. Mr. Ethan works too much. House is too quiet. Boy needs laughing. You bring laughing." "Mrs. Chen, I can't just—" "You can, you will. I am not asking. I am telling." She patted Clara's cheek gently, then turned to Ethan. "You take care of this one. She is special. I can tell these things." After Mrs. Chen left, the house seemed even quieter. Oliver was starting to droop, his head nodding against Clara's shoulder. The fire popped and crackled. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white silence. "I should get him to bed," Ethan said softly. "I can help." Together, they got Oliver upstairs. His room was everything a 5-year-old could want. Toys organized on shelves, glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, a bed shaped like a race car. Ethan helped him into pajamas while Clara turned down the covers, falling into the role of helper without thinking. When Oliver was tucked in, he grabbed Clara's hand. "You'll still be here tomorrow? You promise?" Clara looked at Ethan, uncertain. He nodded slightly. "I promise," she whispered. "Good." Oliver's eyes were already closing. "I prayed for this, for someone to make Daddy smile again. I think maybe God sent you." Clara's eyes burned. She bent down and kissed his forehead gently. "Sleep well, sweetheart." "Love you," Oliver mumbled, already mostly asleep. The words pierced her heart. She couldn't say them back, couldn't make promises she might not be able to keep. But she squeezed his hand one more time before following Ethan out of the room. In the hallway, Ethan closed Oliver's door softly. They stood in the dim light, neither quite knowing what to say. "I'm sorry," Ethan finally said. He gets attached quickly. "I should have—" "Don't apologize. He's wonderful. You both are. I just—" Clara wrapped her arms around herself. "I don't understand why you're being so kind to me. You don't know me. For all you know, I could be lying about everything." "Are you?" "No, but you don't know that." Ethan leaned against the wall, studying her. "When Sarah was sick toward the end, she made me promise something. She said, 'Don't let grief make you small. Don't let fear keep you from living. When you see someone who needs help, help them. When you see someone broken, remind them they're whole.'" He smiled sadly. "She had a lot of rules about how I was supposed to live after she was gone. This was one of them. So this is about keeping a promise to your wife. This started as that, maybe. But now—" He pushed off the wall, taking a step closer. "Now I'm doing this because I want to. Because Oliver was right when he found you. You needed help. And maybe—" He hesitated. "Maybe we needed you too." No, Clara's breath caught. "Ethan, stay through Christmas. Not in the guest house. Here. With us. Let Oliver have a Christmas that feels less empty. Let me—" His voice roughened. "Let me do something that actually matters for once. You don't owe me anything. I know. But maybe we owe each other something. A chance. A break from being alone." He held out his hand. "What do you say?" Clara looked at his extended hand. At this man who should have been a stranger but somehow felt like something more. At this house that should have been intimidating, but felt like the first real shelter she'd had in years. She thought about Oliver, already asleep, who'd sat beside her in the snow without fear, who'd taken her hand like it was the most natural thing in the world, who'd prayed for someone to make his daddy smile. And she thought about herself, about 13 years of being alone, of surviving but not living, of believing she didn't deserve more than scraps and leftovers. Maybe it was time to believe something different. Clara took his hand. "Just through Christmas." Ethan's smile was like sunrise. "Just through Christmas," he agreed. But they both knew it was a lie. Something had shifted between them, something neither could name yet but both recognized. The door that had opened that evening in the snow wasn't going to close easily. He showed her to the guest house, which was less a house and more a small cottage. 1 bedroom, a bathroom, a sitting area with a kitchenette. Simple but elegant, with its own fireplace and soft rugs and a bed piled high with pillows. "If you need anything, the main house is unlocked. Or you can call." He handed her a phone number written on a piece of paper. "My cell, day or night, if you need anything." "Thank you," Clara said, inadequate words for what she felt. "For everything. For not walking past me in that alley. Thank Oliver. He's the one who saw you. He learned it from someone." Ethan's expression softened. "Good night, Clara. Sleep well. You too." She closed the door behind him and leaned against it, her heart racing. Through the window, she watched him walk back to the main house, his figure dark against the snow. What had she just agreed to? But as she climbed into the softest bed she'd felt in years, as she pulled the down comforter up to her chin and felt truly warm for the first time in months, she thought maybe she'd agreed to something she'd been too scared to hope for. A place to belong, even if just for 2 days. It was more than she'd had this morning. 3 weeks later, Clara stood in the kitchen of the main house, flour dusting her hands as she rolled out cookie dough on the marble counter. Sunlight streamed through the windows, catching the dust motes in the air and making them dance like tiny stars. Outside, the January thaw had begun, melting the snow into sparkling rivulets. Oliver sat at the island, carefully pressing cookie cutters into his own sheet of dough. His tongue stuck out slightly in concentration, the way it always did when he was focused. He'd insisted on making snowmen, even though the real snow was disappearing. "Clara, look! This one is perfect!" He held up a slightly lopsided snowman shape triumphantly. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Want to add it to the tray?" The ease between them was natural now, built over days of routine. Breakfast together while Ethan read the newspaper and answered email. Walking Oliver to the bus stop, Clara waving until the yellow vehicle disappeared around the corner. Afternoons helping with homework at the kitchen table, dinners that had evolved from Mrs. Chen's elaborate preparations to simpler meals Clara cooked herself, learning as she went. Ethan had started coming home earlier, not every day, but more often than before. He'd appear in the kitchen around 6 instead of 8 or 9, loosening his tie as he walked through the door, that small smile already forming when he heard their voices. "Something smells amazing," he'd say. Always the same greeting, like a code they'd developed. And Clara would feel her heart do that little flutter it had been doing more and more lately, the one she tried to ignore but couldn't. Because somewhere between Christmas morning, when Oliver had insisted she open presents with them, and she'd cried over the cashmere scarf they'd given her, and now something had shifted. The guest house had remained empty after that first night. Clara had moved into one of the second-floor bedrooms, the one with cream-colored walls and a view of the garden. No one had discussed it. It had just happened, natural as breathing. And with each passing day, she'd fallen a little more in love with both of them. The realization terrified her. "Daddy's gonna love these," Oliver announced, adding another cookie to the growing pile. "He loves snowmen. Did you know that? When Mommy was alive, they used to build really big ones in the backyard." Clara's hands stilled on the rolling pin. Oliver rarely mentioned his mother anymore, at least not with sadness. But when he did, it was always in the context of Ethan, things Daddy used to do, ways Daddy used to smile. "Your daddy is lucky to have you," Clara said softly. "And you," Oliver added matter-of-factly. "He's lucky to have you too. He smiles all the time now. Not the sad smile, the real one." Before Clara could respond, the doorbell rang, sharp and intrusive, shattering the peaceful afternoon. "I'll get it," Clara said, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She wasn't expecting anyone. Mrs. Chen was visiting her daughter. Ethan wasn't due home for another hour. She pulled open the heavy front door, prepared to deal with a delivery or perhaps a neighbor. Instead, she found herself face to face with a woman who could have stepped out of a fashion magazine. Tall, impeccably dressed in a cream-colored coat and heels that probably cost more than Clara's entire wardrobe had ever been worth. Dark hair pulled back in a sleek bun. Sharp brown eyes that assessed Clara in a single cutting glance. "Who are you?" The question was delivered like an accusation. "I'm Clara. Can I help you?" "You're the nanny." Not a question. A statement loaded with implication. Clara's stomach tightened. I help take care of Oliver, yes. And you are? Melissa Whitmore, Sarah's sister. She swept past Clara into the foyer without invitation, her heels clicking sharply against the marble. Where's my nephew? He's in the kitchen. We're making cookies. Melissa's lips pursed. How domestic. She turned, and her gaze was ice. How long have you been living here, Clara? About 3 weeks. 3 weeks. And my brother-in-law didn't think to mention that he'd moved a strange woman into his home with his child? I'm not a strange woman. Ethan, Mr. Sawyer, offered me a position and I accepted. I'm sure he did. Melissa's smile was razor sharp. Tell me, Clara, where were you working before this? What's your background? Your references? Clara's cheeks flushed. I don't think that's... You don't have any, do you? Let me guess. Ethan picked you up somewhere, saw a pretty face in distress and brought you home like a stray puppy. How very like him, always trying to save people. It's what got Sarah killed. The words hit like a slap. That's not fair. Fair? Melissa's voice rose. What's not fair is my sister being dead while some nobody moves into her house, sleeps under her roof, plays mother to her child. Aunt Melissa? Oliver's small voice came from the kitchen doorway. His face was pale, confused. Why are you yelling at Clara? Melissa's expression immediately softened, though the warmth didn't reach her eyes. Oliver, sweetheart, come give your aunt a hug. Oliver moved forward hesitantly, and Melissa swept him into an embrace that looked more possessive than affectionate. I've missed you, darling. It's been too long since I've seen you. You were here for Thanksgiving, Oliver said, squirming slightly in her grip. That was 2 months ago. Far too long. She pulled back, holding him at arm's length. Now, why don't you go pack a bag? You're going to come stay with me for the weekend. I can't. Clara and I are making cookies for Daddy. Clara can finish them. This is more important. Family time. But Clara is... Not family, Melissa interrupted firmly. She's an employee. There's a difference, Oliver. An important one. Clara saw the confusion in Oliver's eyes, the way he looked between her and his aunt. Her heart broke a little. It's okay, Oliver. You should spend time with your aunt. But the cookies? I'll finish them. You go pack your overnight bag like she asked. Oliver's bottom lip trembled. You promise you'll be here when I get back? The question held weight beyond its simple words. Clara knelt down, taking his small hands in hers. I promise. Okay. He hugged her quickly, fiercely, then trudged toward the stairs. Once he was out of earshot, Melissa's mask dropped completely. Let's be very clear about something, Clara. I don't know what your game is, but I'm watching you. Ethan is vulnerable right now. He's lonely, he's grieving, and he's not thinking clearly. You're taking advantage of that. I'm not. My sister has been dead for 2 years. 2 years. And already there's another woman living in her house, wearing her clothes. Her eyes swept over Clara's outfit, a soft sweater Clara had found in the guest bedroom closet, playing house with her husband and child. These aren't Sarah's clothes. Mrs. Chen bought them for me. With Ethan's money. Don't pretend you're not benefiting from this arrangement. Clara's hands clenched into fists. I care about Oliver. And Ethan has been nothing but kind to me. This isn't what you're making it sound like. Then what is it? Enlighten me. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you latched on to the first wealthy man who showed you attention. It's actually rather pathetic. The cruelty in her voice was stunning. Clara felt tears threatening, but refused to let them fall. You don't know anything about me. I know enough. I know you have no family. No references, no credentials. I know Ethan found you in an alley on Christmas Eve, desperate and alone. And I know women like you, women who see a lonely widower and a child who needs a mother and think they've hit the jackpot. That's not. My sister was special. She was educated, accomplished, from a good family. She loved Ethan with everything she had. And you think you can just step into her shoes because you can bake cookies and smile prettily? I'm not trying to replace her, Clara said, her voice shaking. I know I could never. You're right about that, at least. Melissa adjusted her purse on her shoulder. I'll be taking Oliver for the weekend, and when I bring him back on Sunday, I expect you to be gone. Give Ethan some space to think clearly without you clouding his judgment. I can't just leave. Ethan hired me, and I'm sure he'll understand. Write him a note if you must, but be gone by Sunday. Melissa's smile was poisonous. Unless you want me to start asking questions about your background, making calls. I have friends in social services, Clara. Friends who would be very interested in knowing about a woman with no credentials living with a minor child. The threat was clear. Clara's stomach turned to ice. Oliver reappeared with his backpack, still looking uncertain. Melissa's expression transformed again, all warmth and love. Ready, sweetheart? We're going to have such a wonderful time. Maybe we'll go to that toy store you love. Can Clara come? Not this time, darling. This is just for us. Oliver hugged Clara one more time. Don't forget about the cookies, he whispered. I won't. Clara's voice barely worked. She watched from the doorway as Melissa led Oliver to a sleek silver car, watched as she buckled him in, still smiling that false smile, watched as they drove away, taking with them the light and warmth that had filled this house. The silence that followed was crushing. Clara closed the door and leaned against it, sliding down to sit on the cold marble floor. Her hands were shaking. Melissa's words echoed in her head, each one a small cut that bled. You're taking advantage. Women like you latched onto the first wealthy man. Rather pathetic. Was she right? Had Clara been fooling herself? She thought about the past 3 weeks, about how easily she'd settled into this life, how she'd started to think of this house as home, of Oliver as, not her child, but someone she loved fiercely, of Ethan as more than just her employer, the way her heart jumped when he walked through the door, the way his hand would brush hers when they washed dishes together, lingering a moment too long, the way he'd looked at her last night, when Oliver had fallen asleep on the couch between them during a movie, and Ethan had whispered, "Thank you for being here." She'd let herself believe this could be real, could be permanent, but Melissa was right about one thing. Clara was nobody. She had nothing to offer. No education, no money, no family, no prospects. What did she think was going to happen? That Ethan would fall in love with her? That they'd become a real family? She was the nanny. That's all she was. That's all she'd ever be. And Oliver was getting confused, calling her Clara Mom sometimes, drawing pictures of the three of them as a family, building fantasies that would only hurt him when they crumbled. The tears came then, hot and bitter. She'd done it again. Let herself hope. Let herself believe she could have something good. But good things didn't happen to Clara Bennett. They never had. She forced herself to stand, to walk back to the kitchen. The cookie dough was still on the counter. The snowmen Oliver had cut out waiting to be baked. She mechanically slid them onto trays and into the oven, going through the motions while her mind spun. By the time Ethan came home an hour later, she'd made a decision. He found her in her bedroom, packing her few belongings into the same worn duffel bag she'd arrived with. His smile faded the moment he saw her face. "Clara? What's wrong? Where's Oliver?" "With his aunt. She came to pick him up for the weekend." "Melissa was here?" His jaw tightened. "Why didn't you call me?" "She said it was a family matter." Clara kept folding clothes, not looking at him. "I didn't think it was my place to interfere." Ethan stepped into the room. "What happened?" "Nothing happened. I think it's time for me to go." The silence was deafening. Go where? His voice was very quiet. I don't know, but I can't stay here anymore. Why? He moved closer. Clara, look at me. She couldn't. If she looked at him, she'd break completely. This was only supposed to be temporary. Through Christmas, remember? It's been 3 weeks since then. I'm overstaying my welcome. That's not true. You're not. I'm confusing Oliver, she interrupted. He's starting to see me as something I'm not, and that's not fair to him. He's been through enough. Oliver loves you. The words were a knife. He loves the idea of having a mother figure. But I'm not his mother. I can never be his mother. No one's asking you to be Sarah. Ethan's voice had an edge now. What did Melissa say to you? It doesn't matter. It clearly does. Clara, please, talk to me. Finally, she looked at him. Really looked at him. At his gray eyes filled with concern and confusion. At the face she'd memorized without meaning to. At the man who'd saved her in that alley and given her 3 weeks of feeling like she mattered. She said I was taking advantage of you, that I latched onto you because you're wealthy and vulnerable, that I'm trying to replace Sarah. The words tumbled out, raw and painful. And maybe she's right. Maybe I let myself get too comfortable here. Let myself forget my place. Your place? Ethan's voice rose. What is that supposed to mean? I'm the help, Ethan. I'm the nanny you hired out of pity on Christmas Eve. This, she gestured around the beautiful room, at the life she'd been living. This isn't real. It was never going to be real. How can you say that? He closed the distance between them, his hands finding her shoulders. The past 3 weeks have been the most real my life has felt since Sarah died. You've brought light back into this house, into Oliver, into me. That's just gratitude. And loneliness. It's not, don't tell me what I feel. His grip tightened slightly. I know what gratitude feels like. I know what loneliness feels like. And this is neither of those things. Clara's breath caught. Ethan, I'm falling for you, Clara. Somewhere between watching you teach Oliver how to tie his shoes and the way you sing off-key when you cook breakfast and how you actually listen when I talk about work, even though I know it's boring. I'm falling for you, and it terrifies me because I didn't think I'd ever feel this way about anyone again. The confession hung in the air between them. You can't, Clara whispered. We can't. Oliver adores you. He's happier than he's been since his mother died. And yes, he's getting attached. But that's not a bad thing. That's a beautiful thing. He deserves to have someone who loves him like you do. But what happens when this falls apart? When you realize I'm not enough? When you remember that I'm just some broke woman you found in an alley who has nothing to offer? Is that what you think? Ethan's voice was rough. That you have nothing to offer? It's the truth. It's not. He cupped her face with both hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. You have everything. You have kindness that survived years of hardship. You have strength that kept you going when most people would have given up. You have a heart that loves my son like he's yours. And you, his voice cracked, you make me remember what it feels like to be alive. Tears streamed down Clara's face. I'm scared. So am I. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we're allowed to be scared and still try. For a moment, Clara let herself lean into his touch. Let herself believe. But then Melissa's words echoed again. Rather pathetic. Taking advantage. Not family. She pulled away. I can't. I'm sorry, I can't do this. She grabbed her bag and pushed past him, down the stairs, through the house that had briefly felt like home. Behind her, she heard Ethan calling her name, his footsteps following. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. She was out the door and down the driveway before he caught up, his hand catching her arm. Please, Don't do this. His face was raw with emotion. Don't run. Not from this. I have to. Before Oliver gets hurt. Before you realize your sister-in-law is right, and I really am just... Melissa doesn't get to decide who matters in our lives. I do. Oliver does. And we choose you. Don't you see that? Clara shook her head, tears blurring her vision. I have to go. She pulled free and kept walking into the gathering dusk, away from the lit windows and the warm house, and the man who was still calling her name. Away from everything she wanted but was too afraid to reach for. Because women like Clara Bennett didn't get happy endings. They only got brief moments of warmth before the cold came back. And it was always better to walk away before you were thrown out. She made it to the end of the driveway before the sobs overtook her. She sank onto the cold stone wall that bordered the property, her bag clutched against her chest, and cried like she hadn't let herself cry since she was 16 years old. Behind her, the house glowed with light. Inside, somewhere, Ethan was probably standing in the doorway, watching her leave. She wondered if he'd come after her again. She hoped he wouldn't. She prayed he would. Clara had been sitting on that stone wall for 20 minutes when she heard the car. Not Ethan's SUV, a taxi, its yellow roof light cutting through the twilight. She hadn't called one, didn't have the money for one, but it pulled up beside her anyway, and the back window rolled down. Mrs. Chen's face appeared, stern and unimpressed. Get in! Mrs. Chen, I can't... I said get in! You sit out here in cold, you catch pneumonia. Then who takes care of Oliver? You think Mr. Ethan knows how to make proper breakfast? Man burns toast. Despite everything, a broken laugh escaped Clara's throat. How did you... Mr. Ethan called me, said you were being stupid. I told him I fix it. Now get in car before I drag you in. Clara climbed in, too exhausted to argue. Mrs. Chen instructed the driver to head to a cafe downtown, then settled back with her arms crossed, studying Clara with those sharp, knowing eyes. That woman came to house today. Sarah's sister. It wasn't a question. How did you know? I always know. That woman is poison wrapped in expensive coat. What did she say to you? Clara looked out the window at the darkening streets. The truth, that I don't belong there, that I'm taking advantage, that Oliver is confusing me with something I'm not. And you believed her? Shouldn't I? Mrs. Chen made a sound somewhere between a snort and a growl. You are a smart girl about many things, but about this? You are very, very stupid. Mrs. Chen, you listen now. I work for Sawyer family for 40 years. I watched Mr. Ethan grow up. I was there when he married Sarah. I was there when Sarah died. Her voice softened on the last sentence. I know what grief looks like. I know what man looks like when he is just going through motions, waiting for life to end. She turned to Clara, her weathered face fierce. That was Mr. Ethan for 2 years. A ghost in his own house, working all hours because empty house too painful. Barely talking to Oliver because every word hurt. I watched that boy, that sweet boy, lose his mother, and then lose his father too, even though father's still breathing. Tears pricked Clara's eyes. Then you come, and you know what I see? I see man who comes home before dark. I see man who smiles at dinner table. I see man who plays with his son again, who laughs again, who is alive again. Mrs. Chen gripped Clara's hand hard. You did that, not because you trying to trap him or take advantage, because you love them, both of them. Yes? Clara's voice broke. Yes. Then why you run away? Because I'm scared. Because Melissa is right. I have nothing to offer them. I'm nobody. What happens when Ethan realizes that? What happens when you realize you are not nobody? Mrs. Chen squeezed her hand. You think Sarah was special because she had money? Had education? No. Sarah was special because she had big heart. Because she loved hard. Because she made people feel seen. She looked directly into Clara's eyes. You have those things too. I see it. Oliver sees it. Mr. Ethan sees it. Only one who doesn't see it is you. The taxi pulled up in front of a small cafe. Mrs. Chen paid the driver and marched Clara inside, settling them at a corner booth and ordering tea without asking what Clara wanted. Now you listen to rest of story, Mrs. Chen said once the tea arrived. Sarah knew she was dying. Those last weeks she made lists, things for me to do, things for Mr. Ethan to do, and you know what she put at top of list? Clara shook her head. She wrote, "Don't let Ethan stop living. Don't let Oliver grow up thinking love only happens once. Find them someone who will bring light back." That was her dying wish. Not that we preserve some shrine to her memory, that we help them move forward. Clara's hands trembled around her teacup. She wanted him to find someone else. She wanted him to be happy. She wanted Oliver to have love, real love, not just memory of love. Mrs. Chen leaned forward. You think Sarah would be angry that her husband found good woman who loves her son? No. Sarah would be grateful. She would say thank you for taking care of her boys. But Melissa is angry at world because her sister died. She is angry at Mr. Ethan because he survived. She is angry at you because you remind her that life goes on even when we don't want it to. Mrs. Chen's voice gentled. Her anger is not your fault, and it does not get to decide your future. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this. You survived being orphaned at 16. You survived 12 years alone. You survived losing everything on Christmas Eve and still had kindness in your heart when small boy sat next to you in snow. Mrs. Chen smiled. You are stronger than you know. Strong enough for this. Strong enough for them. Clara closed her eyes, letting the words sink in. When she opened them, Mrs. Chen was watching her with something like pride. What do I do now? Now you finish tea. Then you go back. You tell Mr. Ethan you were scared and stupid. You tell Oliver you are sorry for running. And you stay. You fight for this. Because good things are worth fighting for. What if it's too late? What if Ethan, that man drove around city for 1 hour looking for you before he called me? He is still driving. He will drive all night if he has to. Mrs. Chen stood, pulling Clara up with her. Come, I take you home. Home. The word resonated in Clara's chest. The house was blazing with light when they pulled up. Every window glowed, and the front door stood open despite the January cold. Ethan's SUV was in the driveway, driver's door still ajar like he'd just gotten back and run inside. Mrs. Chen squeezed Clara's shoulder. Go. I wait here. Make sure you don't run again. Clara walked up the driveway on shaking legs. She could hear Ethan's voice from inside, sharp with worry. Marcus, I don't care what time it is. I need to know if there are any shelters in the area. She doesn't have anywhere to go, and it's getting dark, and... He appeared in the doorway, phone pressed to his ear, and froze when he saw her. The phone slipped from his hand, clattering on the marble floor. Clara, her name was a prayer and a question and a relief all at once. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I was scared, and I ran, and I... She didn't get to finish. Ethan crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. She felt him shaking, felt the way his breath hitched like he was fighting tears. Don't do that again, he said into her hair. Don't run from me, from us, not without talking to me first. I thought you'd be better off without me. Better off? He pulled back enough to look at her, his hands cupping her face. Clara, I've spent the last hour and a half losing my mind. I was about to call the police. I was ready to search every street in Boston. Do you understand what you mean to me? To Oliver? Mrs. Chen helped me understand some things. Clara's hands came up to cover his. About Sarah. About what she wanted for you. Ethan's expression flickered with pain and something else. Understanding, maybe. She wanted me to live. She made me promise I wouldn't let grief turn me into a ghost. But until you walked into our lives, I didn't know how to keep that promise. I'm terrified, Clara admitted. Terrified I'm not good enough. Terrified you'll wake up one day and realize you made a mistake. Terrified I'll hurt Oliver if this doesn't work. And I'm terrified too, Ethan said. Terrified of losing someone I care about again. Terrified of messing this up. Terrified that you'll realize you deserve better than a broken widower with a 5-year-old and more baggage than any one person should carry. You're not broken. Neither are you. His thumb brushed away a tear on her cheek. So maybe we're both scared, and maybe neither of us knows what we're doing. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we figure it out together. What about Melissa? She said, Melissa doesn't get a vote.